Hey everybody, welcome to Exploring Harmony number 2. In the last lesson, we looked at some voicings for a 4-2-5-1 sharp 6 progression in the key of D minor. In this lesson, we're going to learn some scales that we can use to improvise over each of those chords. After that, we'll map out the notes from each scale and explore how we can use common tones, non-common tones, and limited note ranges to help navigate the harmony while improvising. Okay, so let's review our chords from the last lesson. So we're in the key of D minor, which has one flat, B flat. And we are starting on the 4 chord, so that's G minor, and we're playing a G minor 11 chord. And then we're going to the 2 chord, E minor 11, and we're borrowing the perfect fifth, which is B, from D major. Normally we would have a B flat, flat 5 in the 2 chord in a minor scale, but we're borrowing that B natural from D major to get a little bit of a brighter sound. And now we're going to the 5 chord, which is A7, and it's an altered dominant chord. We're adding a flat 9, and then a sharp 5, so A7, flat 9, sharp 5. And moving on to the 1 chord, D minor 11, and then the sharp 6, which is B, and we're playing a B minor 11. So normally we would have a lowered 6 in minor, B flat, but we're again borrowing from major for B natural, the sharp 6, B minor 11. So those are our 5 chords. Okay, so let's look at the scale for our first chord, G minor 11. Now, I like to use Dorian for minor chords in general, so I'm going to use G Dorian. So here's G Dorian. So it's the second mode of major, so it's the same as F major. Which is also the same as D natural minor. They all have that one B flat. So I'm just going to improvise a little bit in G Dorian. All right, let's move on to our next chord, E minor 11. And we're going to use another Dorian scale here. So E Dorian. Now the Dorian scale is like a minor scale, but with a raised 6. So, sorry, the Dorian mode is like a minor scale with a raised 6. And so it has a flat 3, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6, minor 7, and of course that major 2nd. So this is actually the same scale as D major, with 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So a little improvisation in E Dorian. All right, now let's move on to our third chord, which is A7, flat 9, sharp 5. Now for this chord, I'm going to use a mode of D harmonic minor. So here's D harmonic minor. Now harmonic minor has a flat 3, a flat 6, but a major 7th. So it creates this interesting minor third interval between the 6th and the 7th. And we're using a mode of harmonic minor, so we're starting on the 5th note, which is A. So it's the 5th mode of harmonic minor. Now another name for this mode is Phrygian major third. So Phrygian is usually like a minor scale with a flat 2. But we're going to raise up the third to make it a major third, which creates that minor third interval here. And keep everything else the same, so it's a Phrygian major third. And you can see it gets the flat 9 and the sharp 5 in that mode. So that's a really nice kind of exotic sounding scale. All right, now let's check out our 4th chord, which is actually just the 1. So it's D minor 11, and for that, we can just use a D Dorian scale, same as C major, 2nd mode of C major, so all white notes, or we could play just a D natural minor. So I might use a bit of both of those scales in my improvisation. If I'm building up a large chord in D minor, I'm going to use the B natural, and that's my 13. So a minor 13 chord looks like this with the B natural. But if I'm improvising, I could use B flat or a B natural. Now the reason I wouldn't use a B flat in the chord, it's just it doesn't really sound good. You have this tritone here, you have this minor 9th interval here. Neither of those sound particularly good on their own, but when put in the chord together, it really doesn't sound good. So yeah, we're going to use B natural if we stack that up in a chord, but either B natural or B flat if we're improvising. But if you're playing one of those notes in your left-hand chord, you want to make sure to match that. Say I've got the B here in my left hand, and I'm matching that in the right hand, or B flat in both hands. You don't want to mix them too much, unless you really want some dissonance. And sometimes you want that, but not all the time. So try to match your right hand and your left hand in terms of the harmony choices you're making. Okay, so that's chord number 4, and now our last chord is this B minor 11. All right, now for this chord, we could do a few different things, but what I'm going to do is use D melodic minor. Now, D melodic minor is very similar to D major, but it has a minor third. So instead of an F sharp, we're going to play an F natural. And we're actually using a mode of melodic minor, the 6th mode starting on B. And that's actually called the Locrian sharp 2 scale, because it's exactly the same as Locrian, but with a raised 2nd. So Locrian is like a minor scale, natural minor, but with a flat 2 and flat 5. So here's our B natural minor. And if we flat the 2 and flat the 5, we get B Locrian. And then if we raise up the 2 again, we we get Locrian sharp 2, which is the 6th mode of D melodic minor. And I really like how that sounds on this B minor 11. Now, what's implied, but I'm not really playing in the chord, is that we have a flat 5. And I like sort of implying that type of harmony rather than stating it directly, just because, you know, you don't always have to say everything all at once, but also implying that F there and using it in the improvisation leads well into this G minor, because that's the 7th in G minor. So now that we have all our scales mapped to all our chords, what are we going to do with them? Well, what I like to do is actually line up all our scales and all our chords and arrange them so that they're all starting from the same note. So I'm going to arrange them so that they're all starting from D, because that's our key. We're in the key of D minor. And then we're going to look at which notes these scales have in common. In all 5 of these scales, we have D natural, E natural, G, and A. And then there's some other notes that are not shared with every chord, but shared in some of the chords and some of the scales. So after I've lined up all the chords and scales and circled all the common tones and all the non-common tones, then I like to pick a note and just dive into improvisation. So I'm going to pick A to start and just improvise a little bit over these changes using just A. So even though we're only using one note, there's a lot you can do using just that one note. You can play around with octaves. So playing around with register, you can play around with rhythm, you can play around with dynamics, getting softer or getting louder. You can play around with articulations, long notes or short notes, with tone. Lots of stuff you can do with just one note. But it's still only one note. So I'm going to add G, because that's also shared between all the scales. All right, so let's improvise a little bit using G and A. So that was a little more fun, but you know, we could still add a few more notes. So let's add D and E. So we're going to use 4 notes now instead of 2 notes. And all these notes are available for all of our scales. right, so got a little carried away and threw in an F there, but that was mostly a flub. But you get the idea. There's a lot more. There's a lot more you can do with D and E and G and A than there is with just G and A. So the more notes you add and the more comfortable you are in different areas of the harmony, moving across these chords and scales, mapping out the common tones, the more you'll be able to insert some variety and interest into your improvisation. So really what you want to do is just like focus your practice. So you can look at just G and A, and then maybe just D and E. Until you're comfortable staying in those areas and only those areas when you're improvising and just playing around with different rhythms, different sounds, different articulations. And then we can start to expand to notes that aren't shared in every chord. So let's look at B flat and B natural. So B flat and B natural are not in every chord. They're only in some of the chords. So let's look at B flat. B flat is the third of G minor, so that works. But for E minor 11, that doesn't work at all. So we need to raise that up to B natural. And then when we get to A7 flat 9, well, B flat is the flat 9, so we need that B flat back. And then for D minor, now if we're playing D natural minor, we play the D flat, and if we're playing D Dorian, we play the B natural. So whichever one you want to pick there, that's your call. I'm going to stick with B flat for now. And then when we go to the B chord, we're definitely going to be using B natural. So now let's just limit ourselves to those two notes, switching notes for the appropriate chord. All right, let's check it out. All right, now you might have noticed that that B flat was really standing out over the D minor. So one of the disadvantages to just this like single area soloing is that you can't always resolve your dissonances. So we've got this D minor and a B flat above, and it really, really kind of clashes with the A below, the perfect fifth. And I really want to resolve it down. I really want to resolve that down, but I can't because I'm not using that note right now. I could resolve it up to B natural, so that's a possibility, or I can resolve it to C, but it doesn't really solve the dissonance, it sort of just glosses it over. You really want a resolution by a half step to really solve that dissonance. So let's see what happens when we're allowed to go to that A as a resolution. So definitely a lot of exploration of dissonances and resolutions there. Let's see, we haven't explored F sharp, we haven't explored C sharp. So let's just take a look at those. So here's F and F sharp. F is the 7th of G minor, so that's going to work. It's not going to work over E minor 11 though. We're going to have to raise that up to F sharp or lower it to E, but we're staying on F and F sharp, so F sharp. And then it's our sharp 5, technically E sharp, but we could call it a flat 13, and then it would be F. So that works. And then minor 3rd over D minor 11. And then for B minor, we can use that F natural as part of the D melodic minor scale. Or we could use an F sharp. If we leave it out in the left hand, we can sub whatever we want. Didn't work with that E, but it works if you just have that D natural there. We can sub whatever we want in the right hand, as long as we don't cover that area in the left. Alright, so let's play around with F and F sharp. Adding G. Adding A. Let's add D. Okay, so you may have noticed I actually lapsed into some pentatonic there at one point and ignored my E Dorian scale over the E minor 11 chord. So I was actually using F pentatonic or D minor pentatonic, which is a good sort of catch-all scale over D minor chord progressions. So F pentatonic is F, G, A, C, and D. Same as D minor pentatonic. And another thing you can do is simply play the D minor blues scale, or simply the D blues scale. So very similar to D minor pentatonic, but you add an A flat. Okay, so the last area we haven't explored is C and C sharp. So let's just look at that. So C is our 11th in G minor, and then it doesn't work over E minor, so we're going to raise that up to C sharp. That's our 13, and then we can actually use C and C sharp because C sharp is the major third over A, and then C is the sharp 9. So even though we're using this mode of harmonic minor, D harmonic minor, which skips over C natural, we can include that C natural in the improvisation because it's the sharp 9 and generally works over a dominant chord. So C or C sharp over A. And then we've got a C natural, the minor 7 over D. We could throw in a C sharp there if we wanted to make it a minor major chord, but we're not going to do that just yet. So we're going to stay on C natural over the D minor, and then C sharp for that mode of D melodic minor. Okay, so C and C sharp. You could throw that C natural over the B if you wanted to do sort of a pentatonic sound or a Locrian sound. But I like the C sharp a little bit better. It's a little brighter, but either way. Okay, so that covers pretty much every area of the keyboard. We haven't really talked about E flat, but that generally isn't in any of our scales. You could use it over the the A dominant as a flat 5, sharp 11, but for most of the other chords, it doesn't work so well because it's the flat 6 over G minor, and we're playing Dorian there. It's the major 7th in E, so we're not playing that because E minor. And then, yeah, so it works here over A7. Probably not playing it over D minor because it's the flat 2. And then in B minor, it would be the major third. So we don't really want that either. So we're going to sort of avoid D sharp most of the time, except maybe over the A chord. Or as a passing note. Any of these notes that are dissonant you can use as a passing note to pass through or to start a line, to throw in as like a little grace note, but as a note to hang out on, we're going to kind of avoid that note. Okay, so let's just improvise with no restrictions. Alright, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can help me make more lessons like this by signing up for my Patreon page at patreon.com/jakesmolowe. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and happy practicing!